Hi, John. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Ethan. Thank you.
It's an honour to speak to you. Big fan of your work, so it means a lot to get the chance to speak to you.
Oh, nice one. Great.
Well, I'm sure you're happy with Spurs' result at the weekend, actually. I know you're a big Spurs fan.
Yeah, very. Thomas Frank was the manager I wanted out of, you had Areola at Bournemouth and Silver at Fulham. They seem to be the three candidates. I don't think realistically there was any, unless you're going to take a punt on an unproven manager from Spain or Italy. They obviously wanted somebody with Premiership experience, and he was. I like him because he's tactically flexible, and he's a good psychologist. I think he's a nice guy. He knows it. He seems to know it's good to be a nice guy. It makes sense to be a nice guy. And that squad's not as bad as I thought they were at one point last year. Defensively, midfield, there's plenty of legs there actually when they're fit, obviously. But we are, of course, as ever, two or three top players away from being a team that seriously challenges for top titles.
Yeah.
And Levy, we've had two or three near misses, but he has a reputation for taking ages over deals. I think he's seen as a guy that probably low balls, so the deals don't quite get over the line. You give other teams a chance to get in there and gazump you.
Well, I've just seen
It
that with
seems to
Messi
happen.
going to
Yeah,
Arsenal.
exactly. Yeah, there was a point I think with that deal where they could have got it over the line early doors. You step up to the plate. You know what you're risking. If you don't, you get the job done. Once it went over like 5-6 days, it's just like this doesn't feel good, and it's a bad. The optics are bad. The optics, and he's an Arsenal fan for whatever that matters for footballers. But he's unfinished business there. He was at their academy, so he's probably going to have affections there. So you need to kind of move quickly, get him on board. Once you've got a Tottenham shirt on him, it all changes anyway. But I don't. As for me, Morgan Gibbs White would have been a better fit, or this Morgan Rogers Aston Villa, because they can run with the ball. He's all about these fast transitions, Thomas Frank. So I
Yeah.
think Morgan Gibbs White would have been his first choice. So he's got the skills of a number 10, but he's got the legs of an 8. So they're really good with the press as well. Whereas Ezzy, for me, is a great player, really good player, but maybe fades out of games a little bit at times, as schemers do. It's all, although it's a time of technical flexibility, you probably need to have a little bit of you got to have legs. You got to keep. You can't fade. No team can afford anyone to take their foot off the gas for a second. You've got to be at it. What about Leeds? You happy with the pre-season?
Well, I was happy until Arsenal spanked us 5-0 the other day, and then it's a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah, I sort of first half. I thought you held your own at first with defending quite well. Just couldn't get that ball up. Couldn't work it through the thirds.
No.
I don't know what anything to say, but that's the difference between the championship level, a good, champions level, and Champions League level, which they are.
Yeah.
So they're like the elite level. I think they probably will win the league this year.
Yeah,
It's
I said that.
out of them and Liverpool, because they've gone and strengthened. If they get this in Cappy, they're strong all over the pitch, and it really will be. If they don't win the league this year with the money they've spent and the time they've had, it'll be a disaster.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
What are Leeds looking to go for? They must be chasing Manor Solomon still, I would have thought.
Yeah, I heard they're still after Solomon, but there's only like a week left. I think if we go for Solomon, somebody we had in the championship, it's a bit of a backward step. I don't know. I think we should be. We've had enough
Yeah.
time, to sign a higher quality. But we've brought in James Justin from Leicester, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We've brought in some good players, but
You got Calvert-Lewin.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But it's just about keeping them fit. They're injury prone, them too. So it's just about, and we've got a cup game tonight. So
Who you got tonight?
Chef Wednesday.
Oh, well, they're fucked at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah,
Wednesday,
yeah.
And, I heard they're really struggling to stay in business. Is that right?
Yeah, they're close to like administration, I think. Yeah.
Right. Okay. What happened there?
The owner, I think, he's not been paying people, like wages and staff wages, and he's just run them into the ground. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
How did he get into supporting Spurs then?
it's a good question, really. Where I come from in East London, everyone was West Ham and Millwall. Few Spurs fans. Well, Spurs are like a Jewish team, I suppose. There was, I was brought up a Roman Catholic, but they were like a sort of Jewish team. So there's a lot of Jews in the East End, and there was a big following in the East End for Tottenham, especially sort of Bethnal Green and all that. There's a lot of Spurs fans around there. But it was mainly West Ham and Millwall. But I think Jimmy Greaves,
Yeah.
I just really took to him. So I started supporting him round about the time England won the World Cup. I really got into football. I was 8 years of age and loved football at that time. And I think Jimmy Greaves probably edged it for me as well. He was so glamorous, such a great goal scorer. And I loved Alan Gilzean as well, who looked about 49 when he was 22. He looked really old, but it was a great little flick-ons and all that. So I loved it when, I followed the cup run of 67. I followed all the way through avidly, And then eventually I went over on my old man was not the sort of bloke to take you to football. He was a Millwall fan, but he was quite a taciturn sort of bloke. He was a bit troubled. So he wouldn't have ever taken me anywhere. So I got myself over to Tottenham. Then I started going over there with a couple of my mates, from very young, going to away games as well, very young, jumping on trains and bunking affairs and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah. Well, we'll get on to your life growing up in London that soon, but I want to talk about your album, Dub Volume 1. How did that come about? It's a great album. With it being Volume 1, is there more coming from that? Or?
Yeah, there will be. We're working on a load of albums at the moment with my sons. I'm helping them produce a couple of records. But yeah, I've done a lot of stuff with John Klein. Obviously, I play with my band, The Invaders of the Heart, and every now and then I make a record on my own, so which I love. So you haven't got to discuss it with anybody. You can just do what you want to do. And so I started working on that, and it became a dub album. It's slightly different to most dub albums because there's some of the top lines are like TV films or whatever. They're like TV tunes or film, a bit cinematic, I think. You got stuff like Traffic Slavic dub, which is really inspired by watching some of the horrible footage on X and stuff of poor Russian soldiers or poor Ukrainian soldiers, in little foxholes, with getting drones dropping grenades on them and all that. It's just so sad. And because it's somebody's son, you know what I mean? Anyway, somebody's husband or whatever. So and they're sort of brother races, really, all Slavs. So I just wrote that. That was inspired watching that stuff. So it's like, you don't get many Slavic, it's got a Slavic feel to it. You don't get many dub records with a Slavic feel in 3-4 time, So obviously old Jewish East End of London because, it was Whitechapel was the old Jewish East End. It was a bit like a settle, the old Polish settles, where they used to live. It had that kind of vibe to it on occasion. Very old world, and that resonated with me from when I was young. That kind of woodwind fiddler on the roof sort of soundtrack or whatever. With that, so I think that's what makes it different to most dub records. It's got the chops. It's got that basically a Jamaican vibe, but I obviously my mind's too lively just to stay with that. I want to go off into other areas.
Yeah, it was a great album. I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the Existential dub. I think that was my favourite tune off of it.
Yeah, it's my favourite tune on it because it really chops and changes. And it's very exactly what I'm saying. It's very thematic, Yeah.
How do you keep so creative? Like, say you've got the band and then you go solo. How do you keep so creative, like after so many years as well?
Oh, I don't know. It just keeps on flowing. I suppose one day it won't, or maybe one day I'll be so infirm I won't be able to actually make the music happen. I won't be able to pick the bass up. But right now, whenever I do anything, I'm inspired. you know, and everything starts kind of moving, you know. So it's been pouring out of me for decades now, you know. I think part of it is when you kind of really, I'm not a particularly relaxed sort of person, but in one respect I am. I think with the music and with the spiritual thing, I'm quite relaxed, you know. I'm not all tensed up thinking I've got to make a record and the record's got to be like this and I really want people to like it. I just kind of relax. So I might go for a walk. When I'm in London, I like to walk up the river, walk for miles, and then jump on any old bus. You don't even know where the bus is going, and you get the iPad out and you make a little track, you know, and you're just pleasing yourself, really, like with a dub record, you know, with that kind of stuff. You're kind of pleasing yourself, and it just flows in the same way. When you walk, the alpha wave just keeps recreating, you know. So yeah, it's been that way for a while. I don't take it for granted because one day it'll dry up, I suppose, you know.
Well, that is funny that you mention like that you do it relaxed and stuff because that album is like it really like calms you, doesn't it? Like I listen to it with my eyes closed. It just takes you on a journey, doesn't it? A nice, relaxing journey.
Yeah, just everything can sort of expand. I think it's like with meditation. If you just sit still, everything, you know, everything becomes spacious, becomes quiet. There's a presence to it, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And dub with all the echoes really pertains to that, really, you know.
You mentioned being relaxed. I'm sure watching Spurs isn't one of the relaxing things that you do then.
Oh no, that's completely. You know yourself, if you're a football fan, it only brings sadness.
Yeah.
You know, there's the odd mad, like you know when you come up last year when we won the Europa League, it was incredible because it was like a monkey off our back. It was a huge relief, you know. But for the most part, it's just really frustrating. So this season is back into typical Tottenham frustration with the transfer window, where you're thinking, for the last fucking 6 weeks or more, those fucking idiots have known that we need a number 10, you know, and if they couldn't get that one, they should have got to that. Well, they never learn. You've just got to go if you're going to be a big club. Just pay the fucking money, get the deal done, and, you know, instead of making it all really painful and slow, you know.
Exactly. Well, we've mentioned you're a big Spurs fan. What was life like growing up in London?
Well, it's very different. Probably not. What changed it is probably similar changes in growing up in Leeds or Manchester, and near the big industrial cities. So it was really sooty. You know, you'd have coal trains starting factories, so everything was kind of sooty. There were lots of debris. There were mile upon mile of corrugated iron. You know, there was debris where the bombs had dropped in the East End. They even used to find unexploded bombs every few weeks, and I remember it weren't a big deal. It wasn't, oh, there's a bomb. It was, oh, there was a bomb, and the army had come in a truck, and they'd steam the bomb. There'd be one old Bill, you know, with the helmet on, behind a bit of string, who'd go, get out of it, you know, get out, just chase the kids away. And this would be going on. You weren't, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's completely not, I've got a false memory, but you'd be moved like couple of 100 yards away, basically. They'd steam the bomb. They'd all be sitting around a crater smoking a cigarette. And then suddenly that's it. They'd take the bomb away. They'd steamed all the gelinite off of it or whatever it was. And that was that. You know. Yeah, so quite incredible, really. So it was a lot tougher. You had polio. You know, you had a lot of kids wearing calipers. You know, the metal things on their legs. It was very old world. Very decent, socially quite conservative. I was an altar server. My old man's brother was a Catholic priest, so I was an altar boy, you know. So that was quite heavy. Priests were actually all right. Maybe it's a false memory. I can't remember any of them being nonces, which is a result, right? You know.
Yeah.
Well, but I remember the nuns were they really were horrible, actually. I thought the nuns Sisters of Mercy were really not nice, I have to say. You know, sort of poor girls, mainly from rural Ireland, probably quite bitter in a way. It was all a bit bitter and twisted was the vibe I got with them, you know. But so I'd be an altar server. So I mean, I was accused of being Satan by because on a Saturday evening about 6 o'clock, you would we'd have banana sandwiches. So you'd have banana sandwiches as teletext come on, you know, with the football results, you know. Yeah, banana sandwiches, and you'd see things like Pink Panther, I think they'd be on, that kind of thing. Those kind of there'd be Robin Hood actually would be, they'd play Robin Hood on a Saturday, and anyway, I had to rush down to would have been 5 o'clock on a Saturday after the football. It would have been, and I went in a bit late. I've been had me banana sandwich, which we'd have for our tea on a Saturday, and I didn't genuflect. I didn't go down on one knee. Because I was always anxious. I was a very anxious kid, so I was really worried about being late for the mass with the priest. It's just not firm-handed for you had 12 o'clock mass on a Sunday. You're firm-handed. You know, like Stations of the Cross Easter, you're more than firm-handed. You've got like a dozen altar boys and senior altar boys and all that caper. But it's just me and a priest. But I'm late, so I'm rushing because I've got to get the altar ready and all that, like the candles and everything, you know. And I didn't genuflect. I didn't know there was a sister, and she was one of the younger ones, and had seen me not genuflect. So on a Monday at school, I think it was Sister Bonaventure, I can't remember, one of the old nuns, you know, the head mistress, who wasn't the Mother Superior. There was a Mother Superior, and there was but anyway, with Sister Cyril, when Sister Cyril rings the bell, drop your books and run. Like so, there was a sister, might be Sister Cyril. There was a Sister Bonaventure, Sister Cyril, you know, Sister Josephine, you know. But I remember them two were the senior ones. I always got them equated when I watched Colditch years later with the main camp commandant and then the second, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The second commandant, you know, like Colditch, if you take him to see them, you know, they might take you out and shoot you. But anyway, so the assembly starts on a Monday, and she says, "Oh, Iris, you know, there's a boy here who thinks he's better than God." And I thought, fucking wow. And looking around like, you know, he's like Satan. Oh, fuck. Wow, she's heavy. Who could that be? She went, John Wardle to me. I'm like, come up there, you know, and that's when I've got this thing. You didn't genuflect, hand out, you stick. And of course, you get a nudge. One thing about working class, you're inured to pain. So I was always able to switch off it. I have to put my pain threshold. People with my wife, you know, and people when I've sparred in the pub, people are like, fucking hell, don't you feel pain? And it's like, I learned to deal with pain as a kid, you know what I mean? So, yeah, so it was quite mad. But anyway, the thing is, when I've been in a church on my own, they're quite creepy. You felt there was a presence there. You felt there's some sort of presence in the church. And you'd have the candle always lit, which fascinated me in the Holy Spirit. And I kind of got the notion of the Holy Spirit out of you know, the Holy Spirit is the thing that moves. That's the ghost. It's formless. You know, and over the years, all I knew then, it felt supernatural. And I could feel the presence. I felt that's the Holy Ghost. You could feel it moving in the church, you know. It's all flickering. You could see it. You could feel that presence. And as the years went past, you started to intellectualize that as the thing that moves before thought,
yeah.
You know. And actually, to me, that spirit, you know, that is the formless thing, you know, that is the formless thing that can't fade, the formless thing that doesn't have a center, doesn't have an edge, the formless thing that is present, the formless thing. How far away is it? Is it 16 meters? Does it vary between 16 meters and 1 meter? And of course no, it isn't. It's actually, there's no distance from it. And then you actually, you know, that's my innate nature, actually, you know. I let myself down, you know, with sometimes with how you behave, you know, when you get triggered. So easy to get triggered now. And I don't get triggered, but occasionally you only get triggered and you fucking bastard, or you're at football, you know, fucking send him off, you know, to the ref, you know. And there's times, most of the time when I'm like that, I'm aware that I'm like that and I can see the fun. But the times you get triggered and you really react is really horrible, because you become pure anger or whatever, you know. So this thing I'm talking about, you take a shape, the angry man shape, or you have a strong identity. I'm a Tottenham fan, you know, you're rigid. Whereas with this stuff, you know, it's formlessness. There's no distance from it, and that's the thing that you feel with you through your day. You know, you can kind of feel that. I became a Buddhist just because, you know, Buddhism for me was just very methodical in so many ways for breaking down. It's a great deconstructor, Buddhism. So it breaks down, it just creates this feeling that everything is impermanent. This table I'm sitting at is made up of component parts. The component parts have component parts. I'm a composition. I'm a compound of body form, feelings, perception, inclinations, thought. Consciousness in terms of I'm conscious of this, I'm conscious of that. You know, it's all in. It's impermanent. You know. What is it that remains changeless? Is there anything that remains changeless? Or, is there the Manikamaka with the middle way? Is there any positive affirmation? Or is everything negated? Is there any kind of positive negation, positive affirmation at any point? Because with some Buddhists there isn't. It's just nothing. Everything's broken down. There is nothing. That's where you get the talk of I used to hear the void, which scared the life out of me. So years before I become a Buddhist, I decided I'll never become a Buddhist. It's fucking horrible. Fucking what? They don't have a God. There's nothing to hold on to. It's just a fucking void, man. Fuck that. I respect them for their discipline and some of the stuff that's in with the Dharma about aggregates and this, which I thought sounded fantastic, but I thought it was very scary. There's no soul as such. No personal identity. But anyway, whatever. So that the spiritual, and that's all that stuff's ongoing. That's an ongoing adventure. So yeah.
Well, music has been a big part of your life since early on, and you've always had like an eclectic taste.
Yeah, well, in a way, it comes from the spiritual. It comes from that, because I get the bass now, and I'll make a line if I play the bass now, and I'll get a thing going. It's a prior thing. So I sit here, I am, before I'm this, before I'm that, I am. What was prior to I am? What's prior to the bass line? And it's as if that bass line has come through from that dimension. I remember once, didn't even discuss it with him. I went to do a bass line for Bill Laswell, and I got there and I played in a certain key, in a certain tempo. He started the tape, and the bass line fitted the tempo of the track perfectly, and it was the correct key. And I remember he just looked at his tape op. He would do a quick looks, Bill, like that. And nothing was said, and I thought, I know why you're going like that, and it's fine, but I don't know why this has happened, but it's happened, So I've done this stuff. I've never said that to anybody. I don't think, that story, and that happened. That really happened. It was with a guy, Bob Roscoe or something, I think was the engineer that day. And it was, I think it was at Brooklyn. It wasn't at the one out in New Jersey. I think it was Greenpoint, that happened,
Well, years before you started playing bass, you were attracted to bass sounds, weren't you?
Oh yeah, I mean, very. I come from generation and class. We liked all the reggae. We liked blue beat. We liked ska and Trojan. I was into the Trojan compilations at a young age. All that stuff. That's the stuff I really loved. And I liked Bottom End. So it was what Bottom End did to me. Listening to reggae sound systems, that really interested me, because it was just, I think as much as anything, it just sort of, I realise now, when it stops your mind, so it becomes like a kind of bardo, you know. It's like, oh, you know, anything stops the mind. I remember when a geezer, and quite a heavy fella, he's quite a heavy fella, and he started knocking out smack. So he gave us all, it was smack become very readily available because the Shah of Iran got deposed in the 70s. So whereas there was only like 1,000 smack heroin addicts in the country, and they would get their script and go and see private doctors in Kensington, you know, to get their, you know, and it was all very decadent, and it was a real niche market, you know. So a film like Get Carter, when he goes to buy the heroin from the bloke on the bridge, it really is as if you're going to go and buy plutonium or something highly illegal, you know. And within a year or two here, it come down in price because so many people left Iran and needed to get their money out, so they bought it out in the heroin. I suppose they could get the heroin very, very cheap and then sell it for a big profit here, but in so doing, reduce the cost. So it was a huge influx of heroin into the inner city. So Leeds, Liverpool, you know, one of the first girlfriends I had was a convent school girl. I was working, I left PIL, and as it got into in fact, it was after PIL, to be fair, because it was cabin. So this would have been mid-80s and sort of 84 or something, where I left PIL, had quite a bit of success, but then was drinking and drugging and, you know, and just wanted to straighten myself out. And I mean, just get a regular job. So this was before I stopped drinking and worked on the underground, but I did just a bit of cabin. So the guy said, you for real? Because I was a punter with it, you know, it was a Maltese cab firm. I said, yeah. So I did it for a few weeks. I was still doing the music and all that, you know, but I went down to these flats in Poplar, which is quite a way to go for Sydney cabs, like from Stepney. And, you know, normally every mini cab company, like anywhere, you know, works its local area. But this was quite a way. That tells you something. If that tells you they've had an issue with local cab companies. And so they said, yeah, Johnny, be careful with these. They are the fucking junkies. It's all this. I'll go to pick them up, and that girl got in the back seat. I didn't recognise her. I kept thinking, I know her. I'm looking like that. And I realised who it was. It was like, fucking hell, wow, you know. Anyway, so what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, so, and of course, Johnny Thunders and the Art Bakers, they turned a lot of people onto Smack, the group. So my mate Ronnie worked for them. Ronnie got into the Smack, you know.
You worked for them a bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I did a roadie, yeah. If you hang about with these, they'll get you on the gear too. So just, if you're going to rob them and fuck off. You know, they were nice fellas though, don't get me wrong. I thought they were a great band. On that package tour was Cherry Vanilla, I think it was, and I think it was Cherry Vanilla, and the Police. The Police had Henry Padavani on guitar. Sting would come up to me and say on the bus, what's those tapes you're playing? He wanted the names. I was playing I had a load of reggae tapes I play, you know. And Ronnie didn't like Stuart Copeland. He thought he was a dickhead. You know, he didn't like him. You know, I'm sure he's all right, you know, but he didn't like him. They had a guitarist called Henry Padavani, and I said to people, this band are fucking shit. They're never going to get anywhere. Johnny Thunders and the Art Breakers, they're brilliant. But of course, Johnny Thunders got a serious drug issue, didn't go anywhere. And Police become massive. They got a new guitarist and become a massive group, become very successful. But that was the thing I was going to say. The geezer was knocking the Smack out. Me and all my little gang of mates, he gave us all, we hit a Smack, a nightclub, a famous nightclub in the West End, upstairs there. It's a soul night. And I just sat there and they all went off to be sick. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, nice. And he's talking to me saying, it's not the first time he'd done it. I said, it is. And I was thinking, Dave, shut up. I just want to sit here. I don't want to talk. And I'm normally very chatty. But I was just, and I realised, fucking hell, this is the wrapped in cotton wool. I just felt, oh, it's lovely, you know. So I'm just sitting there. I wasn't slumped over. I was just sitting there, self-contained, which quite spiritual actually, you know. So it's like that. So the spiritual thing does to you what the drugs do, you know. Just nice, okay, you know. But in obviously in the real way where obviously booze and drugs just leads to, you know, that'll destroy you, you know.
Yeah.
So that was it. And I said, that's it. I thought to myself, I'll never do this again because I've taken to this too much. Don't know why I started telling you that, but anyway, I can't remember why we went down that road. But that's what happened.
With Smack, obviously, you were good mates with Sid Vicious, who was doing that from a young age.
Yeah, he was another one. He's another one who got into it. Yeah.
Is that? Could you see like it was always going to go down that road? Is that another reason he stepped back from it as well?
Well, I met Sid through John. He worshipped John. There was only him and his mum. He had no feeling of family around him. Whereas John had a very lively Irish family around him. He didn't have that. His mum was out the East Midlands somewhere, I think. And she had a Derbyshire accent. And she kicked him out. It was all very dysfunctional. I remember seeing her bang up. I'm only 16. I'm up there flat in Queensland Road, and I'm like, oh, fucking hell. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure about this. Fucking hell. And he banged up. And I was very young, and I just thought, oh, I don't know about this. He come to join us at Kingsway College for further education. It's like a sixth form college, I suppose you call it now. And Lydon had been headhunted, you know, for the Sex Pistols. Sid really was, I didn't realise at the time, was furious and jealous because he wanted that. And I think he was the one that Vivienne Westwood wanted to get in. But they got the wrong one. They got Johnny Lydon, Johnny Rotten. And of course it worked very well. So I was left with Sid at Kingsway in 75. So, you know, John disappears. I'm left with Sid. Sid's just hanging about with me. I don't think he wants to hang about with me, but he just did. So I had a girlfriend at the time. He's just hanging about with us and this, that, and the other. And hang about, get up to a bit of mischief. And he had a psychiatrist. And he asked me, he said, will you come and see the psychiatrist? Not a counsellor, it was a proper psychiatrist he was seeing. So we go. And the mad thing, I remember when I did a documentary on him, on Sid, I used the tapes of John Savage, the archives. John gave me access to them. And on one of the interviews that his mum, you could hear her saying, she found that he didn't go to Kingsway. If he'd gone to Kingsway, I would have known, but he fucking did, you know. So she had no real idea, you know, or anything of where he'd been. And anyway, he said, will you come see my psychiatrist? So he was obviously, it was all quite sad, but when you're young, you don't see it like that. Everything's just a laugh. So we went on to see the psychiatrist. Now, he wasn't called Sid then. By the way, I'm eating these orange Mentos. They are the crack cocaine.
Oh, nice, then, yeah.
The crack cocaine of fruit-based sweets. You know? Honestly, I get them on the motorway services. And I had to lay off of them because you can't stop, you know.
It's like the heroin again.
Well, the crack cocaine of fruit-based sweets. But anyway, when I bought them the other night, some Eastern European, but I said, you know, love, I said these are the crack cocaine of fruit-based sweets, and she just said, I don't care. Okay, fair enough. done. You know, here's my card. See you later. But so we go and see the psychiatrist, and he's calling me John, and he's calling Sid John because his real name is John Beverly. And we kind of know where this is going. We're just about whatever he does, we'll take the piss. He says to me, John's talking about ending his life, and you know he has nothing to live for. And he's told me a bit about you. And I know you've got a girlfriend. You go to football matches and you go to movies and you do all these things, which I think he probably thinking really at that age is quite hip. Really, it was only 17. Somewhat I go to films, you know, fucking Last Tango in Paris, all that sort of stuff. I loved it. You know, I still love all that. Last Tango in Paris, you know, all this bollocks. And I'd go to second-hand clothes thing. I'm still always a Tottenham fan. That was the year we played Chelsea. Remember the big, you know, they went down, we didn't. It was a big knuckle in White Hart Lane. Oh, yeah, it was a massive brawl. They were beaten 2-0. I think Elfie Conscoy, Glaswegian player we had with long hair. He was good. Anyway, so I'm into all that, going to the movies, got a girlfriend. She was like, she introduced me into that. She went to the McLaren stock. She knew all about that because she'd gone to school around there, this girl. So I kind of knew a bit that world. And anyway, so he said to me, John, he says, John is talking about ending his life. He has nothing to live for. You've got a girlfriend, you go to movies. I've got to say, it was one of the first they said movies, and I thought, cunt, for using the word movies, because at that time, with the pictures, anyone said movies, cunt. Even if you used the word guy, cunt, hippie, because it was geezer. Yeah, so some of these guys, oh, you like guy, like, you know, like fucking hippie, you know. So didn't like the word guy, chick, fucker, she's a bird, she's a Richard, not a fucking chick, she's a Richard the third, you know. So he says to me, you go to the movies, can you encourage John to get involved? Perhaps you'd invite him along to some of your things. And I said, I just went, did that face, you know, I don't know. With him, I don't know if that's worth it for him to try and live a life. Did go, yes, see, to the geezer. So he's like, see, I told her. Even my mates think that. And the bloke said, but yeah, you can't ask him to. I said, oh, just for him, it might be better. You know, I'm sorry. I just think it might be better. And the bloke was really upset. I mean, he was really disturbed. Didn't know what to do. We left there a bit like, well, what's the fucking problem? Then we got outside and we're like, laughing and joking about it, you know. But of course, when you look back, you think, oh, fucking hell, many a true word said in jest, you know. No, he was really, he was very lost, you know.
Yeah.
And when you think, he was older than me, I'm like 17, he's like 18, 19 at that point, and fuck me, 2 years later, he was dead. So, you know, I didn't know that. But at the time, but of course, within a few, you think, fucking hell, you really did mean that. A very weird thing to get involved in, you know.
You mentioned he was troubled, like, at this point, but John Lydon has said before, like, bringing him in the band was the worst thing he could have done. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was daft. What John showed up, 75, I'm sitting in the canteen now. There'd been a lot of trouble there because there'd been a civil war between... there'd been a war in Cyprus between Turks and Greeks, Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots. So there'd been a bit of needle in the college because there's a lot of Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots there. I'm just sitting there, and so you had a bit of an edge there, you know what I mean? You know, it only just died down. And he turns out, I said, where you been? I'm in a band. I said, what do you mean you're in a fucking band? He said, I'm in a band. We're called the Sex Pistols. And I'm thinking, this would be fucking shit. He's not, you know, I said, what do you do? I'm the singer. I thought, he won't be able to sing. This would be shit. He said, do you want to come and see us record? So I said, all right then. So even though I was on piss taker, I was sensitive, and I thought, didn't really articulate it exactly, but I just did kind of think, this is going to be shit. But I'll say it's good. Got to encourage him. This is going to be really bad. You know, wherever the fuck this is. So we get down there, get in a rehearsal room, and they start doing it, and it's really good. And the best musician in the band was Glenn Matlock.
Yeah.
Which is unusual for rock bands with bass players. Normally the guitarist to be I mean, Steve Jones is a good guitarist. I'm not saying he's not. And Steve, and Boogie's fucking great, you know, and he's a very nice bloke as well, Paul. You know, I run a community thing in London. He comes down there, you know. He's very down to earth. I like Paul. But Glenn Matlock was a bit like McCarthy, that kind of, obviously a very clever cape, because he was one of the first on that scene. He doesn't come out of the book very well, you know, Steve's book. Although I saw the Disney series, and I really liked it until the point Sid was in it. And then it sagged like real life, but the first were fun. But it is a dramatisation, and I think Glenn was unfairly characterised as a dull, you know. I think he was on the scene before Steve even, you know. So he was on the scene wearing all the threads, very bright, maybe annoying, maybe he was an annoying sort of bloke, I suppose. But John didn't like him, I don't think. He never felt like he liked him. He used to think, fucking grammar school boy, you know. Was the vibe. It's smug, you know. And which is one of the perils with, I'll get seen it one or two people in my background who crack on, get, you know, the grammar school kind of vibe. I've seen it one or two cousins, and they can get, you know, you kind of think, oh, fucking, they're a bit smug, you know, they can, you know, without realising it, can come across that way. But, you know, anyway, it doesn't matter. But, so I think he was Chris. They got rid of him, and I remember thinking at the time, "You're fucking mad," because he's a really good player. He's obviously can write songs. He's really got half an idea. You got rid of him because you don't like him, and you got this bloke in who's an absolute fucking liability, you know. And I've seen Sid round the squats, and I didn't think he could play. You know, he could just do the Ramones thing, but he wasn't that bothered in trying to learn or be musical. But when I did the documentary on the radio, and I got Viv Albertine, she absolutely weren't having it. She loved him. He still really holds a candle to him. So she said, no, he was brilliant. He was a great musician. He was really talented, you know. So which is so sweet. I mean, I love that, because I just have to say, fair enough, you know what I mean, you know. But and I remember when we had to take this thing out about him having a girl. She said that he had a girlfriend, you know, that used to come and see him, a secret girlfriend. And I was really I said, where was that? Sort of around the squats. She said, yeah, he had this girlfriend used to creep in to see him, you know, and I was fascinated with that, you know, because I said, I didn't really know him have a girlfriend until Nancy, you know. So yeah, anyway, so she really holds a candle for him still, you know.
He definitely had the look, didn't he? Like say the playing weren't there, were it? But the look, you can't argue with that.
Oh yeah, it was iconic, and you know, he was a funny bloke, you know. So he was a funny bloke. He had a great sense of humour, you know. So it turned some of the people I'm very good friends with, like Vince Bracken, is a guy, Terry Penton, I'm very good mates with, big Tottenham fans. And Terry, I didn't even know Terry knew him. I know Terry from other circles, and Terry was the one who put him up when his mum kicked him out.
Oh, really?
Can you believe it? Yeah. So, you know, he put him up on the set. He's out of Mile End. Big Tottenham fan, Terry. You know, so you know, good mate of mine. Yeah. So it was a small. You know, it's funny. Even after all those years, you realise people had connections you weren't aware of.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he knew him. So I got Terry on the interview, but on the documentary, and interviewed him. And he said, yeah, you know, so him and Vince and all that looked after him. When he moved to Hackney, they looked after him because he had a Bristolian accent. So he spoke a bit like that. Right, fellas? He was like that. That was it. Sid had that accent. So Terry was telling me, yeah, he looked all like Ziggy, which I remember. He looked all like Ziggy Stardust. He's a big Bowie fan, and he's at this party. He's taking the piss out of the geezer's party. Was in Stoke Newington, and Terry said to him, "Pack it in." stop taking the piss. And so he got Larry with Terry. And Terry said to me, I picked up the nearest thing at hand, which happened to be a meat fork, and stuck it in his neck. And then he said, our relationship was never the same after
that. With the Pistols, you were on the boat, weren't you, for that, on the Thames gig?
Yeah. I think I started the fight. It was a French photographer was just pushing his weight about a bit. And I think I trimmed him, maybe got into a scuffle, and it all kicked off, and there's how I remember it. I think it was itching to break out in a fight at any point with the people that were there. But that's how I remember it. I remember me and McLaren going up to the wheelhouse saying, come on, like, let us drive the boat, and all that. It was quite mad, and when the boat docked, we had enough sense. I was with a girl just to hold on to the girl and walk through like, oh, what's going on here? I don't like the look of this, Whereas people got off the boat going, fascists or whatever, they got nicked, So we managed to kind of get off without any grief. I went to the Cambridge pub, I think,
What? So you got a call, obviously the Pistols split up, then you get a call from John to join Public Image. What was that call like?
I still remember it. I've been in a squat in South London in Borough. I've set fire to the furniture, which upset the person who owned the furniture, the guy, Anthony English. And I had to do a correction in the book. He had a terrible fight at a North London public house. And in a big pub, the George Roby, you had a big row. And he said to me, it wasn't furniture, it was that you were bringing people back. There was that geezer called Scabs it was, and I didn't fucking like him. He had a tankard. And I didn't want you bringing those people back to the squat, but that's what it was. Oh, okay. Sorry, mate. Fucking hell. I thought it was because I burnt the furniture. But it was annoying, but it wasn't just that, That was the discussion we had. And so I moved back home when the squat finished in probably in November. Christmas comes and I'm under heavy manners of the old man. They didn't really want me about, so the old man's like, look, you got to give me £20 a week. Fuck off, sling your hook. So it was like, fucking hell, that happened before, so it wasn't very welcome there. And I sort of thought, fuck it, I'm going to have to get another squat. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, So I'm holding on after Christmas, and we're getting through into March. And I've really got to my position's on. I've got to get a job. I've got to get a squat somewhere. I've got to do, I'm going to have to get another squat. I've never thought of just having a privately renting a flat. I was too young. I was on the list. And that, even them days, the list, you'd have to wait a while before getting a council place. So I got one not too long after that, but, eventually I got a camp, but I had to, so I just thought I'm going to be squatting again somewhere, So I went up the West End or somewhere. I don't know what it was. I'd gone up the Whitechapel. I come back from Whitechapel. Now, OCD-ish, there was a little library on the Jewish estate, and I always had to go clockwise around it. Always clockwise, either way. And the weirdest thing that day, I went anti-clockwise, which was for OCD. Something made me do it, and it just felt completely fucking weird. So I got back, and the phone rang, and it was Lydon. And he was over at Gunter Grove. I hadn't seen him for a little while. I knew he'd split up with the band, and he said, I'm starting a new band. Do you want to be in it? I'm like, fucking right. So that was it. I've gone over there. I start picking up 60 quid a week, so I had a bit of money I could give them. And I never really got on, it was always domestics and all. There was always big arguments going on, But so, and I got eventually, but I was able to give them money and buy other things, like I bought my mum a spin dryer and everything. But I think I had a council place by 1980. So, you know, it was a couple of years later, I had a council place, and I used to stay away from there for long periods anyway, you know. So I'd always, like with Ronnie, I'd go around Ronnie's house when things got too heavy at home and vice versa, you know, but I could always kick down at Ronnie's gaff, you know, and all that. But, yeah, I've got a council place anyway. But that was it. That was PIL. So, you know, that was fantastic. It gave me something I could get my teeth into. I really fancied the job with bass, and you know, I just thought, I don't know, I just had the knack for doing bass lines, and you know, with good lines, you know, even then. And I was very lucky because Lydon and Levine would all. Can you see me all right, by the way?
Yeah, it's all sound. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got the fucking sound come right out, you know. But yeah, then Lydon and Levine let me do whatever I wanted, you know. So there was no bullying me into I'll change this, make it a different key or whatever, you know. I put me cool sunglasses on. You'll think better of me. It's the fucking sun blaring through. But yeah, so I was very fortunate to be a novice, but be allowed to play to my strength. You know, just do the lines that I wanted to do. You know.
Well, I've read your book, and the first bass line you brought in was for the Public Image single, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, just you know. And I still, the last night, 2 weeks ago, we did a community thing. We're broken up for the summer. We're back in again next week. But the thing we did there was, I think the last half an hour of the playing, I was doing a line that just pulsed like that. It just had it, you know. It's just got that certain vibe, you know. It's just, it wasn't E to B. I was doing like an E to G, I think, that night, but it was brilliant anyway. You know, like, yeah, this was a few weeks ago. You know, just that same simple idea, that pulsing, and all about the bass sound, you know.
Yeah, all the playing on the album from all four of you is brilliant. What was it like recording the album?
Very exciting. I love going into recording studios. It was very fraught from the word go. So I had a big fight with a tape op kind of guy. It was a bit arrogant at a Robin. What was it? Was it Wessex Studios? And it was near a pub, the Robin Hood, and I think we had quite a big fight. And he was just a bit arrogant in front of some people, you know. And I wanted to shoot off, and I suppose because I was young, so we had a bit of a row, about a tear up. Which I wasn't really, you know, I wasn't. It sounds like I'm a tear up merchant, but I wasn't. I had a temper, and I would stand up for myself, but I didn't really want to be getting involved in fights all the time. But that's what we were like. Quite remarkable, you know. There was always violence around, and you know, it wasn't at all controlled, you know. So we did that. With obviously the record company wanted us to have producers, but we kind of resisted that, I think, generally, to be honest. And so I think basically produced it ourselves, as I remember. I remember John Leckie did a track. I can't remember what. And he's a nice fella, but apparently I took his wallet, which I don't remember, but I took his wallet. I've just gone in and he said, I'm producing, you know, give us your wallet. And I went off with his wallet and didn't come back that day, apparently, which is amazing, really. You think, wow, it's quite heavy. But yeah, I did enjoy being in the studio, though. You know, I wasn't offhand about it. I fell in love with going into the studio, you know. But I did start to learn during the making of that album that actually I prefer being in the cheap studio, like Gooseberry Studios in London, Chinatown, rather than the Manor, because these places are like £1,000 a day at the time, like £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 a day now, and actually you can go to Gooseberry for, you know, the equivalent now of 400, 500 quid, you know, and it was really great, you know, great bass sound, great engineers, and I realised a lot of it was in the engineers. So we were these blokes who were very quite formally trained kind of people, you know, I guess, in the big system studios. They all wore kickers. Maybe that's where that full on kicker conspiracy comes from. They all wore kickers. You know, it was all quite middle class, and I didn't really like it. Whereas working at Gooseberry, you had Mark Angelo, and you had who's the reggae fucking guy? God, I can see his face. Dennis Bavell. Dennis. But they were the two engineers there. I struck up a good friendship with both of them, but especially with Mark. He's Linda Lasardi's brother. Remember the Page 3 girl? She's in Emmerdale, isn't she?
Oh,
yeah, you know. Anyway, yeah, so that was, you know, and that's where we I think the bass sound, so you hear something like Graveyard or you know, and another, that's the bass sound from there, just really heavy. It was a bass trap. It was naturally good for bass. Whereas the other two in the band, John and Keith, wanted to be in the more expensive studios, you know. Whereas I wasn't really taken with that. You know, I thought we could work in those, we could have been a little bit more off the wall even, you know, and a bit dubbier, not in a cliched way, but, you know, in our own way, you know. It would have been, I think, maybe a little bit more interesting to work there, and you're going to have more time, you know. But whatever, what will be, will be. So it all worked out. We started doing songs, but we quickly, I think, especially me and Keith, I think we just thought, well, I'm going to sit outside actually. I think me and Keith just thought to ourselves, why do we want to just be sort of writing normal bourgeois kind of song? Maybe we would prefer to, you know, to do something a bit different, you know. And I suppose the difference with that is that you can do the mad, you can do the first album and it's great, and then you do the all important second album and you have you have great songs, and it's got a theme, and it's an incredible new album, you know, and that's the one everyone's been waiting for. Or maybe it's the third album, you build to it, you craft things, and then eventually by the sixth or seventh album, you do the weird self-indulgent album that everyone hates but becomes a cult classic years later. Well, we just jumped straight ahead and made the second album. You can hear stuff like Theme from the first album, and at least there was more of a song. Not Bad Baby, what's it called? Bad Life. Bad Life was more of a song. Good songs.
Yeah.
And it went with Public Image. But Theme, Fodder Stomp is just something else. But it is a great big long groove, you know. Keith wasn't there for that day, it's just me and John. And there we are saying this is contractual, we're contractually obliged to do this album, you know, to finish the album. So this is the track we're doing. And of course it's taking a mickey and it's very offhand, but it's a good album, you know, a good track, really good track. But stuff like Theme really pertains to, you know, to Metal Box. You can kind of hear that. You can hear it alludes to Metal Box at times, the sound generally. And so when we'd done Metal Box, we'd already had a foot in that camp with Theme somehow, you know. And so it was all about Metal Box. And we'd done it, yeah, we pulled it off. It's a really classic album, isn't it? I think, you know, very left field. And that was it. And I think by then, realised Keith that was it for him for guitar. He hardly ever made a guitar part anywhere near what he'd done with Metal Box or the first album. The best track was that. Theme to me is incredible. Pop Tones and Public Image, the song, you know, just incredible guitar parts. I think some of that's because he was on the gear. So by the time we were halfway, 2/3 of the way through Metal Box, by that point, he had a raving, you know, so he was just never going to, never going to get on the right kill, on an even kill. You could see that. You know, it was one of the reasons I left, because I felt with Johnny Lydon, you know, you're the governor. We're all young and all that, I know, but you're the governor. You need to get hold of this, you know. You need to get hold of it. And you come to realise, it took me years to realise, actually, you know what? It was perfect. They were done by then in that way. And I'm not being churlish or horrible. It's not demeaning them. Not many people can make stuff like that. That's so special, you know. And it was great for me. You got that out of your system, and then went on in my own checkered way, making world music, you know, and getting into, you know, all different genres of music and having a very varied career, if you like, you know. So it was in a way perfect that the band, that to me really was public image, you know. But once that stopped, that was it. So it goes in name, but that was really you know, it still goes in name, but that was really public image, I think, to a lot of people, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, was life in a band how you expected it to be?
Sorry?
Was life in a band how you expected it to be when you were in public?
No, not so. I didn't know what I expect. I mean, I hung on to go to America, and because America was, I mean, I'm the only one from that trip that didn't end up with a green card, didn't end up being an American citizen, I think, actually. And that's not to say I don't love America. I think I love going over there, you know, but it's, you know, I thought it was fantastic. But I hung on to do America and then left. It was really good at first. It was great fun. It was what you would expect being in a band, but it really quickly, as you moved into 79, there was more Class A drugs, and people come in and around the band who are allowed to sort of operate, you know, and you need to run you need to run a very tight ship. You know, we didn't have management. In a way, that was a strength with Metal Box, because if you had tough management in that situation, the tough manager in cahoots with the record company would be putting the band under very heavy manners to bring a producer in and to write proper songs to generate income, you know. Because we didn't have management, that didn't happen. So in that respect, it was good, but it was very badly run business off state, you know, like generally. So I only ever did, I don't know, I probably did less than 20 shows with Public Image. So that was frustrating, you know. I wanted to be playing more. There were TV things. I think we were supposed to do Mickey Most, who I really got on with, met him, really liked him. We were supposed to do his show, and we really snubbed him. I was just not turning up for some reason, you know. So that was a shame, you know. And it just got more. The behaviour got worse and worse. It was a very bad vibe, you know. Very sort of teenage, like very angry sort of teenage vibe around it. So I couldn't be stomaching that. So I hung on, went to America. I knew, well, by that point, the game's up. Even in America, it was great in a way, because you learn what matters in life. We got picked up by limos. Me and Atkins had our own limo at the airport with a television in and a drinks cabinet, which in those days, if you're out of 70s Britain, this is like luxury. This is incredible. I remember thinking, this just seems so empty. You know, it just felt very empty, the situation, you know. And I'd rather have been in less ostentatious, but with people you liked, you know. So it was a bad vibe, you know. I really didn't like them, you know. I thought they were really quite toxic people for me at that time, you know. You know, not nice the way people were treated in and around the group. I didn't like it. So that gone on for a while, and I decided just to shoot off. So all the time we were making Metal Box, I kind of felt like that. But it was fine. We still, to be fair, in the studio functioned okay. It was outside of it. It wasn't a great vibe. And as I say, the way the business was run was absolutely appalling, obviously, because at some points I couldn't get my money, my wages. So I was really fed up with that. And so I went to America. After we come back from America, I went, and the money was kept in a shoebox. And I went, just turned up there, no messing. I'm having a shoebox for the cash, the band's cash, which was, it was in high. I'd never seen such high denomination bills in my life. I think it might have been £100 notes, certainly 50s. And it was just a shoebox for the cash. I just took that. It was a little hiding place for it, which I knew, so I'm just going to go and take that because I'm owed that at least. I took that. And I've got money for solo stuff from Japan and everything. And I was kind of rolling, and it was all good. I met Holger from Cannes not long after through a guy called Angus McKinnon, music journalist, who introduced me to him. And I really got on well with Holger. Took him to Gooseberry Studios. He loved it there. We did How Much Are They? And then they took me over to Germany. So I met the person who's the best drummer I've ever met in my life, Jackie Leverzay. So within a matter of weeks from leaving PIL, his youth Martin, who's the Killing Joke guy, the producer. I know Youth. And he says, I couldn't believe it, you've been in this really cool band, Public Image. He was working in Germany with Connie Plank and with his band. And I rock up over there working with Holger, I'd already started with Holger before they came over. We went to Connie Plank's studio to borrow some gear or something, and they were there. I knew you from London. So he said, I couldn't believe it. And it's true, so I left PIL, ended up sort of in Cannes in a way, do you know what I mean? Working with the Cannes fellas. And then went to New York with Francois Kevorkian, went round all the loft scene, toured America, come back to London and did Snake Charmer with Holger, Jackie. We did How Much Are They? It was come out as a record. So I had some successful records at that time, and that's when I started Invaders of the Heart as well, So it was quite a dense little period of history,
Well, while you were in PIL, you recorded 2 solo albums. Obviously, John Lydon's brought you in, and him and Keith Levine have already been in bands and stuff. But when you did the solo albums, is that when you knew you could have a life outside of PIL and carry on without them?
Well, one of the reasons I did that was not getting any, struggling to get money out of it. But the one thing I could do, which was incredible, I could get authorization from Virgin to go into studios. So I went to all the little cheap studios around London, like Gooseberry and places. There was a kind of South London version of Gooseberry that never really happened there. And I just learned my craft, made some pretty wacky off-the-wall records. But that was where I became really addicted to being in the studio, So loved it. And I was just determined. I didn't do it for money. Although I ended up, at the end of it, when I could flog the stuff to Japan, I was able to get money from it, because there were licensing deals and I had to get an advance. So I got a couple of Japanese advances, and actually it was a really public, you were never going to get any real money out of Public Image, because even we were advised to sign our publishing to Public Image. So that took years to resolve after I left. It was really at the time, it's just like, why, So it wasn't good for me, so it took 16 and a half years to resolve that issue. 16 and a half years, which is resolved and it's great. So, the royalty started coming in, so that's all good. This money was kept in an escrow account at that point. Non-interest bearing, by the way, just as a little point. The original Public Image got taken out, went into receivership. So, the actual company went into receivership. So that made life complicated as well. So it took a very good lawyer I had to kind of patiently deal with it. It took 3 or 4 lawyers before I eventually got a lawyer that doggedly stayed with it, you know, and got it sorted, which was fantastic, you know. It was really good, smart move. It was just instinct, nothing but instinct, that made me go and make these records, other records, and start to build something for myself. You know, if public image had been run properly, with, you know, with any kind of proper business organisation, I would have been 100% through to that, 100%. But I was very disappointed the way I was treated at that time, and in the way the thing was run. And I'm not the only one. You know, you listen to what Jim Walker has got to say. You know, he's another one to say the same thing. None of it said with any rancour now or bitterness, because I wouldn't change a thing. Everything worked out fantastic, you know. And as I always say, so I left Public Image, went on to do this other stuff with Can and, you know, with Jackie and Holger, and went to Island Records. So did a few different things. I still screwed up, and I can't blame that on Public Image. I still started drinking too much and all that stuff, everything goes with it, and ended up really digging a hole for myself anyway, which took me a couple of years to get out, you know. So I can't blame that on them, you know. But it wasn't a nice. I don't look back with it. There's not an immediate feeling of fondness. You actually look back to it and think, oh, that was really not nice, you know. Basically, the music's good, but the first part of it, fun, but that last year, really very, very dark for me, you know.
Does that hurt more, like, that you were mates with John Lydon and not it like ended as it did?
I think that's less samsara, you know. That's it. This is like what's together comes apart. So I still remember meeting him. Was a great person to meet and hook up with, you know, become mates with. Was fine, really funny in the first part of it. So I don't have any regrets. It's just how things are, you know. I don't hold on to any sort of bitterness with it at all. You know, it just is what it is. It's just my reflection might change in it one time, but when I look back, you kind of think about, yeah, that was fun. That was fun. Actually, that period there wasn't fun, but the music was really good. But it really wasn't a nice vibe. It was really insecure and horrible and dark. And you know, sometimes people in this business, I've had it since, sometimes in this business, people act in a way that's just really, just not nice, you know? You sometimes find that in life. It's just they don't do themselves any favours in how they behave. They don't cast themselves in a good light, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
You know? And I'm sure, I think he's reinvented himself since that, you know, and all that, I'm sure, you know, and it's fine. But yeah, for that little period wasn't, you know, and as I say, I wasn't the only one. A lot of cars, they drugs knocking about it, few operators, and just very, very dark, not very, you know, no shows. You know, so if you're a band, you should just be doing shows and making records. And we should have been doing a lot more shows and active, but weren't, you know. So it's just how it was, you know. But, as I say, you know, for the most part with him, he's really good, you know, great, very happy, fond memories, you know, early on, as I say. And I think that was generally the theme. I think Jim would tell you that as well. At first, really good fun, you know. But then the drugs come in, the money comes in as well, and people get a bit greedy and that, this, that, and the other. You know, the shenanigans. Jim didn't sign it. Jim kept the public thing for the first album, which was the wise thing to do. You know, so he's got a story to tell about it, Jim. So it's not just me saying it. You know, yeah. It was just something that kind of went on. So by the time you're into early '79, I know full well I'm leaving. I'm going to get this record finished. I'm going to go to America, and then that's it. Which is what happened. Exactly what happened. You know.
It's a shame that happened.
And then I got asked to join again when he wanted to reform it. 2006 ish. I met him to talk about it, and I didn't really think anything had changed, to be honest. It was a nice night. We went to a curry. We got on. It was fine, but I didn't think anything had really changed, you know, to be honest. Well, and I put something on it to represent me. The money was rubbish yet again, you know, for that kind of level was pretty poor. It's £1,000 a week when rehearsing, £1,500 a week when playing gigs, which I'm not being funny at that level at all. Is like, that's not bad money, but I pay my band that, you know, I'm saying that's a terrible time, but it's, you know, at that level, you know, as a musician, you need to get ahead with things. Do you know what I mean? You know, so, you know, when the going's good, you need to be sort of earning stuff. I didn't really want to, and I kind of felt a bit perfunctory for me. Didn't feel like, yeah, we could really do something exciting. Do you know what I mean? You know,
you're saying your bucket was just like playing you felt like it was just going to be the early tunes, didn't you?
Yeah, well, the thing you do, what I would have done, do metal box really well, you know, really well. And you pick venues sort of very imaginatively. It becomes really iconic. And then you do a new album, and the new album has to be better than anything you've done in the past. It has to be equivalent to the metal box. You know, if you can't do that, don't do it. And I just felt it's a case of we're going to go out, we're going to do it. And I thought, not only will we just do the old songs I'm written, but you will want me to play on stuff from the 90s and the 80s, you know, Public Image, which wouldn't be my cup of tea, you know, bit bit turgid, you know, for my taste, you know, really not what that original Public Image was about. So I would have if we'd done it, I would have wanted to honour that. But I just realised, no, this wouldn't really happen. And to be honest, I didn't say this, you know, until I'd done the follow-up to the book. When I left there that night, it was like, wow, you know, I just felt like he ain't changed at all, you know, and that's fine. That's not a problem. But I just felt, God, I really feel like there's been a lot of intervening years. There's been a lot of changes. I really am in a very, very different place to what I was then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so you just think you had so many things go on and you developed in such a way. And I didn't feel like as an artist he developed, you know. That's not to say he's not iconic, he isn't a big star. You know, just there wasn't a feeling he'd really developed. And it wasn't even worth to try and start a conversation about doing something, because it's like trying to, like, you know, with Tinder, trying to make not that I've ever been a campsite person, but when you're trying to, I think the analogy of trying to make a campfire in a high wind, you know, and you've got the Tinder and it won't quite catch. So it's having a talk, trying to take it into that kind of territory. And yeah, you just know, yeah, this guy's not really developed as an artist in that respect, you know.
Well, I think you've got to look at the Pistols now with this reunion. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, I know they fell out with him, which is a shame, but it doesn't surprise me. You know, and I must admit, it looked, as it always does with those court cases. I wouldn't want to comment too much on it, but you just think, God, the things really have to end up in court.
yeah,
really, you know, really, you know, you know, I was happy to see Steve just have his moment in the sun. It's not going to change John's position. He's an icon forever now, you know. You know, he doesn't need to worry about any of that. I wouldn't have thought. Do you know what I mean? It is what it is. I thought it wasn't a terrible series. As I say, I enjoyed the first three up to when Sid came in. When Sid came in, that was when you know, in real life, it's so weird. It's like that's when it got boring in real life. Do you know what I mean? Because I could hardly be watching it once Sid was in, because that's when it just become, you know, the heroin and the, you know, really depressing. And, you know, there's a sort of, when heroin comes in, it's just such a lack of energy, you know, and focus, you know, it's so dark, you know, there's just, there's no vital energy to sort of build stuff.
It's ironic that he let it sort of repeat itself with Public Image, with Keith in it, on the smack and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think he had strong, at the time, I said it in the book, I didn't think he was a strong leader. You need to be, you'd think he would be, but he wasn't, because when I first met him, he was very charismatic, but he just as a leader, and I think I'm entitled to talk about this now, because I've been a band leader now for a lot of years, decades. So I think I know what it is to be a band leader, and to lead things. It's not easy sometimes, because you can be everybody's bloody friend, and then you can be everyone's enemy. It's not easy at times, But I've done it for years, and I think pretty successfully for the most part. The fellas I've got now are like Yorkshire boys. So, yeah. There's a lot of good players out of Huddersfield. They're Northerners. I've got a guy out of Oldham who's really good. They're great fellas. They've had 15 years. They're good guys, So, and it functions, and all that stuff. But yeah, he just wasn't a great band leader, So it all kind of fell apart. If you look at what happened after I went, you look at what happened. Martin Atkins sort of knows a lot about what happened at that point, because he thought he was out, but he stayed in. And I just always say to him, why did you stay for so long? Because this was the thing I just knew, never get anything from this. You go now, take what momentum you've got, and just go out and get on into the world and do it, which I did, which was a wise action by a young man,
Yeah.
I didn't do too many wise actions at that time, but what I did, enabled me to go out, work with Holger and Jackie. Can you imagine what that was like? So I please don't think that I'm sort of really disappointed in John. I'm not,
No.
Yeah, it was great to meet him. He set me up with it all. And then, thanks to him, I've ended up going over working with Holger and Jackie. Now, that was an experience, they were just like mentors. I had an idea of how you could form music, how you had to approach music, and they really validated that in me, like the first thing that they were incredible musicians, incredible artists. Those two, in Jackie, best drummer I've ever come across,
Well, it is, like you say, it's sad how it ended, but it's a silver lining, because then you get to do what you want, and you can you've got more freedom then. And what I wanted to say is you've done...
Well, I've got to say this, Ethan. The most important thing is that the music is good.
Yeah, you've got two great albums out of it.
Yeah, if the music's good, everything else is good. Everything else is just feelings, and he said, she said, and it was a bit, I was very disappointed, and it doesn't really matter. And as I said anyway, years on, you kind of thought, actually, it was perfect, for all the faults. That was a great way, because it was really amazing art. And then you've gone off and you've done that, and then you've gone off and you've developed, fruit yourself. So there's nothing to be complained about at all. And the money got sorted out. It took 16.5 years, but eventually the money got sorted,
Yeah, that's good, yeah. Well, what I was saying was, like, you must be well respected within the music industry with musicians, because you've done a lot of great collaborations since Public Image.
Yeah, well, it's nice. I mean, I'm always working with people. Just recently, we've done Horace Andy, Ken Booth. That was amazing, especially the Ken Booth one, because he was like on top of the pops when I was a kid. And the thing is that when I used to hear Tamala, but especially the Temptations, all those bands, at the time I couldn't understand it. It just sounded like the music of heaven. I didn't understand how they put that together. And so when I then had a chance to do a record with Ken doing Temptations, can you imagine? It was just like I did the high backing vocal on Just My Imagination. Because believe it or not, I can get the real high notes. John's trying to tell you that. So tuned in whenever there's a high harmony, I'm the man. I'm the high harmony guy, So I did high harmony on it. And so that's been 2 compilations. What a dream. I had no idea. I just thought I was producing record for them, and then my name's on the front as well, which I'm not complaining about, so that was great. And I work with a lot of people. We can all be dickheads, obviously, in life, but I think the thing about me with music, I've been very true to myself,
Yeah.
It's funny, I saw a thing on Edward Hopper, the artist, last night. I don't know too much about him, but love the paintings, and it just got to the end where it just said, what can be achieved with an artist who just sticks to their principle, just keeps coming back to that basic principle that they've got, what you can achieve, and he just captures a certain stillness in paintings, and then he went out of vogue in the 60s, in the 40s, 50s. He went out of vogue for a while. He was considered a bit old-fashioned, and he wasn't bothered, just carried on, So yeah, it was a very undifferentiated path for me. I followed that sound. I've let the music take me, really. I've not created it. So the music's just taking me a certain way. It's all about the absolute. It's all about the Godhead, if you like. That's what it's about. That's what it's always been about. Losing, when you look, if you talk of modern art, Edward Hopper, if you look at Rothko, this immediacy of the painting, this enormous painting. It's not like a novel or a piece of music that goes from left to right. It's like reading a novel in one hit, not having to turn the pages, one thing, And that, to me, I like the impressionist stuff, Monet and people like that. This thing of the ocean, when I look at the ocean.
Yeah.
I love looking at the ocean. I think the reason I like looking at the ocean is because it says death. The absorption, it's this massive thing you could go and drown and lose yourself in. It's just like this absolute thing. And generally, that's always, if not evident in the music, it's just under the surface. There's this enormous spaciousness in the music I make, I'd like to think, and you come at it one way and you come at it another way, but there's always that same thing, that same essence in it, that same innate nature to the music, and I've just come back to that. I think it teaches you just to be humble. You just come back to that way of working all the time,
Yeah. Well, we spoke of collaborations. You've been working with your sons and their band. What's that been like?
Oh, good fun. Yeah, they're 2 albums now. And they're working on an album of Irish stuff now. That's their part of their heritage as well. And there's another album after that. So that's been really good. They obviously grew up listening to my father. I'm going to go back in there. It's slightly windy now, but it's nice to get it. That's probably the last of the sun.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. Yeah.
But they were in the Pagoda Youth Orchestra in Liverpool, and then they listened to my music over the years. So they really they absorb music from all over, So they're really finding their voice now. John's a little bit like a Jackie Liverzay vibe, So he's boned up on Liverzay. Plays everywhere. Yeah, he's got a reputation as he was in the Stockport Percussion Ensemble. So he was known for being a good boxer and a good drummer. The 2 things he done, but he was really known as like a drummer. And Charlie was a good footballer. He was at York. He was a professional at York under Jackie McNamara. Yeah, when he was there. So he was at Wigan Academy when Martinez was there, and all that. And then he just developed his sound. He plays Chinese violin, but he's got a lot of plugins now, and he plays Morin Kerr. So they've got a Mongolian vibe going on as well as Chinese, and as I say, very Irish as well. That's becoming really apparent, So yeah, I sit in with them sometimes in the studio. I do stuff with them, and my advice to them last year was, look, don't go in the studio, keep it really. So much stuff is overproduced now. People on Logic and all that, and Pro Tools. Just keep it very not lo-fi or anything, but just very raw, very immediate. Which is going back to that instinct that when I worked with Holger and Jackie, as Holger used to say, play first, speak later. Play first, talk later. And you don't go in with a because you're going in with a sort of a prism of self, invention, concepts. Everything's a concept. The first concept is I am. With the concept of existence, it's a conceptualization. I am. I'm talking. It's a concept. Before I'm this or before I'm that, but it's still a concept. What beyond that? And we're all about being prior to I am. So that's why I said to the boys, just do the stuff. Just trust in yourself. You do your own engineering. And it paid trump. I said, you'll start getting stuff that's really real and immediate. It'll have that presence to it. You yet again, that presence in the church, the Holy Spirit. You capture that presence.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing your lad's name's band right, but is it Tian Kiwi?
Yeah, don't worry. I couldn't pronounce it right. It's Tian Kiyi.
Tian Kiyi, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know this. I didn't know what the Kiyi was. And their Chinese names are Tian, Tianri, and Tianqi. So Tianqi and Tianri. So that Tianqi, Kiyi is their surnames in Mandarin. They could do it in Cantonese, but it's Mandarin. That's the marriage of their two middle names put together. So they're both. It's John Tian Wobble and Charlie Tian Yi Wobble, and I get confused because sometimes me missus uses or they use a Cantonese language and sometimes Mandarin, and it is slightly different, So like in Cantonese, my wife's maiden name would be Li, but in Mandarin Liao, so it's a very different language. So they confuse. I'm like, fucking hell, give me a break. Just give it to me one way. I prefer Cantonese because phonetically it's easier. But yeah, they've got an Irish record coming out on Dimple discs. So it's proper Irish covers that they've done. It's really hard. I mean, that's the stuff that really resonates with me.
Yeah, you must be proud.
Oh yeah, I love playing with them. I hang out with them a lot anyway. Charlie lives in London. They've both got straight jobs. They know that's the deal now. You've got to have a straight job. As I said to him, a lot of my life is admin, like managing myself is admin. It's straight, I'm afraid that's the lot of a musician now, It's what it's like,
You spend more time doing that than actual music then, do you reckon?
It takes up a lot of time because you are a business. You have a turnover. If you have a manager, if you was going 20% to a manager, you wouldn't really make a living. Wow. So you run it all from your iPhone. So you got to book the hotels. You do your own technical stuff now. It's easier for me just to do it on an iPad with a virtual studio. Do you know what I mean? Even in terms of creating. So there's a lot of it is. I had an accountant's meeting today, just with the accountant, just going over, you've earned a bit more this year than last. Oh, well, okay, you know what I think it is? It's this and that actually was pretty good. So, so you've got to pay some tax. Okay, no problem. You pay tax, but, you got to be on, you've got income coming in from all over. So you've got to have some basic. You're running a little business, You're running a little business. Even if you 30 shows a year, and we do long shows, even 30, 40 shows a year. There's a lot of shows to set up, get the logistics right, get the travel right, and all that. So it's a business, and it's. I didn't ever want to have to do this, but because PIL, yet again, I can thank PIL because PIL was so fucked up. A lot of musicians go through life just being like little babies, little chicks having to be fed, Everything's done for them. They haven't really got a clue how life works. But because PIL was so fucked up when I left PIL, I had to get it together and learn the business. Right, how do I hire a van? How does that work? Should I buy a van? Should I buy an old ex-GPO van? Do I need a full-size van, or would it be better off with an escort van and then hire a van in for the gigs? Blah, 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 you know. And you learn to book things and do things and work at quite a humble little level. But that level gives you kind of longevity somehow, because it's efficient, you know. So you're doing your 30s, the way it's boiled down the last few years, you're doing like your 30 shows a year, 35 shows. I mean, last year was probably more. We probably 50 shows or something because we went to America. You know, and believe it or not, that's quite a big itinerary. You're doing that. You're doing your recording. You know, but last year the book came out, so you're doing book appearances. You know, sessions have come back again. I've been doing a lot more sessions recently. You know, with Excel, playing with Stamper, and you're doing stuff with Richard Russell, you know, which has been really good. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. So, but it's a business, you know. Yeah, it's a business, and you run your little business. It must be like a very successful window cleaning round or something, you know. Like that's, you know, you are a small businessman, you know, basically, and it amazes you. I'm very proud of it. You know, I had 2 companies. I sold my record company, and I was glad to. You know, it wasn't a terrible deal. And then what I did the next day was start a new record company, you know. So, you know, so it all kind of works. It's challenging. It's not easy. Streaming was bad news, you know. That was really terrible news. You know, I just knew that. So that became very hard running a label at that point. Streaming was terrible for independents.
Yeah.
You know, I naively thought, how comes the record companies are not suing these people? Oh, right, because they invest in it, of course. For them, with the big, powerful catalogues, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, it's just money. It's just money flowing all the time, and your copyright consolidation you're controlling copyrights. I've got the term they use. You know, you're utilising all your copyrights, you know, in an efficient manner, rather than just releasing records and taking punts on records. You know, it's just this bulk of money that comes in that probably even there are a few independent records, and you know, with catalogs still, independent record labels, there's probably a few about. They'll be earning, you know, a lot of money through the digitals, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned shows before. Can you remember your first show with PIL in Brussels? Like, how were you feeling going out on stage and stuff?
Oh yeah, there's a story there. Really, with your first gig, most people do it at the Dog and Duck up the road, and they have and they do half an hour, and they're very nervous, and they come off and they talk to their best mates and have half a lager and say, what do you think? And they're all excited, and they come backstage, and it's the little dressing room or whatever, and it's, you know, really exciting. I thought you did great, and maybe their mum's there or their sister or something like that, you know. With me, right, we go on to Brussels to do a gig. Okay, you've never been on a plane before. 2 days before the gig, you got your passport, haven't you? I'm like, what's that? Well, you have a passport. So I had to go to Peterborough, which was the place where you went for emergency passport. You know, so I went now. So we fly out, doing a gig. It's quite tense. It's quite a toxic, angry atmosphere for whatever reason. John's probably winding them up a bit. He's very charismatic guy, John, at that point still. So this is the thing with him, you know. Might sound like I've been critical of him to an extent, but you know, picked up on his, you know, on the downside of him, but which we've all got. But from 1975, when it really started, through to about 81, he was an incredibly charismatic guy, looked great, was the zeitgeist. He really was, you know. And he'd wind audiences up, so he would have wound the audience up a bit. There was a guy at the front kept going like that to me. And he looked like, you look back, he looked like Freddie Mercury. It might be a false memory, but he looked really sort of dark, black jacket, bit of a biker vibe there, sort of biker sort of fellas in a way. Anyway, somebody kicked him in the boat race. I don't know who, but somebody kicked him in the face. It all kicked off. We ended up barricaded in the dressing room. There was tear gas was used to clear the scene and all of that. And that was my first gig, you know. So that was PIL. You know, it's like in America. I only did a few gigs, and I'm over in America. I got the limo with the television and the bar, the little mini bar in it, and I've got my own suite, you know. So I've got my own suite of rooms in, you know. I was still a teenager. I'm pretty sure I think I was still a teenager. I was a teenager when I got in PIL. I was only 18. Only, you know, so I was 18. So it was, by the time I was I was very young, you know, when can you imagine being 18? You haven't got a big brother. Nobody's going to play big brother. So everyone's doing class A's. I'm doing all this very, very strong speed. And there's nobody there to be big brother in that situation. Nobody's willing or capable to be that. Do you know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
So you very much sink or swim in this very tough environment, you know. So it's quite heavy. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, actually. And I survived it because I was tough. You know, I was tough and I sort of survived it and desperate. I think most healthy people wouldn't need to be that desperate, probably, you know. But anyway, so the next gig was Paris, and somebody threw a frozen pig's head from the circle right down, and it done me. Fell on the floor because I didn't know what it was at first. It's like it really hurt, you know. It kind of concussed me a bit, and it was a pig's head and it was frozen, and it was looking up at me, belfully, like, you know, through the gig. So yeah, there you go. And a lot of spit coming in. So that was my first two gigs. So it's all very violent. You know what I mean? It was violent back then. When we got back and we did gigs in Christmas Day, there was a big fight on the second day. I hated it. That was when punk was turning into the boot boy thing. You know what I mean? And all that. Yeah. So that was it.
Jesus. Well, at least you had that were your first gig, so it can't get really much worse from there, can it?
No, well, at least I don't think I missed a beat with a pig's head. I carried on playing, and it was all good. And like I said, you know, it's funny the way it's all kind of worked out from there. I must admit, you know, you look back and you know, I just think, God, you know, I really need it. What I was always lacking was an arm around my shoulder from when I was young. You know, that was the thing. I needed a mentor, some sort of father figure or something, you know, big brother, somebody to do that, which I never really got. Maybe years later when I stopped drinking, I had a bit of that, you know, to be fair, I suppose, you know, you had a little bit of that from older blokes giving good advice. It took me a lot of years, it can be a very powerful thing with young people, especially young men, you know, to get very wayward and attention seeking and, you know, very angry.
Yeah, like you said, 19 getting driven around in limos in America and like meeting Martin Scorsese nearly doing the soundtrack and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing, you know, it was like a dream. But then life, you know, as life progressed, the biggest surreal thing is driving the tube train, because going through all that and ended up driving a tube train in London, that was fucking hell. How did I get here? And going to Birkbeck College, London University. So the first night there, walking across the big mat, those big brown mats that said London University, it was like, fucking hell. How did I get here? You know, so I tend to have those very surreal. I've had a few of those very, very surreal moments. You know what I mean? You know, in life.
Is that true with the announcement when you say used to be somebody? Is that a true?
Yeah, that was at Tower Hill, yeah. And those days you had to go to the little key. The intercom was on the wall. Now they just do it with a little walkie-talkie thing. But you had to go there, and it was a slight delay on the eastbound, so it was getting a little bit full. And I said, you know, put the finger. I used to be somebody. I repeat, I used to be somebody. And then I looked down the platform and just looked like that, and you see them all swaying a bit and No one going, what the fuck? No one's saying that, but just people just looking at each other, you know.
What was that period like then? Was it a tough period? Obviously, you had the drink and drugs, which obviously will have been tough, but what was that break like? Did you need a break from music, do you think?
Pretty much of a break, actually, because I came into AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, October the 23rd, 1986, my sobriety date. So I was halfway through an album. So half of the album was done on the drink and half off the drink. You can hear it in the album. There's stuff like, there's a track called Alcohol. You can see clearly where that's coming from. That came out. That was October. By the Christmas, I'm doing a courier job, driving a courier van. Really snowy. It was really fucking difficult. It was quite a cold winter that for a couple of days. There was heavy snow. I had to go to Swindon on a motorway and come there. It was some of the worst driving conditions I've ever seen. Everything, you know, with a car, everything ices up your windscreen. It's quite dicey. Remember that? And then by the March, I had 2 job offers, post office and London Underground. And I took the London Underground. So I started working. And at that time, Neville had knocked on my door anyway before the March and said, don't you fancy doing it again? Neville Murray, who was the percussionist for Invaders of the Heart. So I'm like, fucking hell, do you want to do it again? Because I've really fucking burnt his hand, and, you know, I burnt all their hands in the Jolly Jake that I did once at a hotel, you know, where I heated the door handle, called them all in, and they all got, you know, it was really bad. So I've been really, I thought that no one wanted to know, but they were so, all like me. Harry Beckett even, I thought that I'd worn them all out, and I had. But I think they liked me and knew I was for real and a bit mental, but they all thought the world of me, I guess, which I find very touching. So I said, oh, fucking okay then. Yeah, we'll get it together. So I put a new band together. It took a while. He said, I found a geezer. I said, I want a geezer who can do the Middle Eastern stuff, or girl, you know, anyone. He said, I found a geezer. It's only one thing. And Neville was like me, very left-wing. He said, he's an old Etonian. And it's like, oh, fucking hell. But we got him in anyway. I decided to be open-minded. I've been on the picket line at Wapping just before I got sober. Very angry, you know. So, and I just thought, fuck it, I've just got to live and let live now, really, you know. And I still have to remind myself of that now. Just live and let live, you know. Just get on with it. And so that was that. And so I used to go to a place in studio with a guy, David Harrow. So the Point Studios. I was already doing stuff. I was doing sessions at that time. That was in 87, going into 88. We went and did a tour in 88, you know. So I'd done the Underground, took time, because I hadn't taken any holidays. I had a month. I went and done a tour for a month, because they come to me and said, you haven't had any holidays, you know. So I had like a month to take off, went and done the tour over there. And then Bomber came along, you know, Boyzone. So it wasn't easy. It was like 4 years part-time, you know. And then I did another courier job where I had a Luton, which I could use for the gigs. So I can remember doing a gig with Stump in about 89. That was by then. And we come out, and I had to do a 17-point turn in the little street outside it to get out. And we played it. There's 1,000 punters there. It's packed out, but the balcony's not open. It's just the bottom part of it. And this was where the world was changing. So we played a show with Stump, Irish fellas, nice fellas. Done a good show. We come out, and there's been 1,000 people in there watching us. There's now about 10,000 people outside wanting to get in for the rave.
Really?
So this was the rave culture, yeah. And there were some football hooligans there that I knew that were going, hello, John, what are you doing? I said, I've just done a gig. And they're like, oh, great. And just touched my face and touching the van and I thought, what the fuck? These are thugs. But what are they on? Are they tripping? It's like they're on tripping, but it's like they're on speed as well. So it was MDMA. So I hadn't, you know, I couldn't identify what drug they were on, because I thought it was grippy. But this is fucking, and being really affectionate to me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's really disturbed me, actually, you know. So anyway, that was the rave culture was starting. So I started when I went down Video Street to the Embankment very early in the morning. I would start to see the first them young punters queuing up, you know, and all that. So I was station staff before I went on the trains. So yeah, that was the beginnings of the rave culture, you know. So yeah, it was all good. Then I hooked up with Andrew Weatherall. You know, we done Bomber, and he got me in a couple of things. So it took about 4 years. I mean, marriage broke up. I was working in a glass warehouse. It was the last straight job I had. I ended up knocking the owner's son out, actually. We had a row. You know, very lucky for the old Bill not to get called and all that, I guess. But anyway, yeah, it was a bit of a fight. But yeah, it was a lot going. You know, it took a while. So it didn't come easy. But I've never. It was a myth that I probably said, yeah, I took a bit of time out. But when I look back, I didn't take hardly any time out. 3 weeks, you know. Yeah. So I never really stopped making music. The only thing was, for 4 years, it was part time, which wasn't the end of the world, you know.
No.
In fact, I look back at the underground and have some regret leaving. You know, I really enjoyed it, you know, and I could have done it and done music as well. Would have been harder with the touring, but yeah, you know, it was kind of work for me, to be honest. I did like that job.
Can you tell us more about that tuned in though? Because I think that's fantastic what you've done there.
Yeah, well, I started it up here. Didn't get much help off the local council. I wasn't looking for like tons of money. Just wanted help facilitating it, and it all got confused. So I was bitching to a mate of mine in London called Anthony Hopkins, not the Anthony Hopkins, although I have met him, and he's a really nice fella, by the way, the real Anthony Hopkins, but my mate who's also very nice. And he's quite senior at Merton Council, and he's a grafter. He said, listen, that's perfect for this time. Do it here. You know, we'd be honoured, and I can get it up and running in weeks. And I thought, he won't get it up and running in weeks. It'd be fucking ages, but I'll go along with it. Well, he got it up and running in weeks, certainly months. So we do it at Wimbledon Library every other Monday. So this next Monday coming, which I think is the 1st of September, we built a studio as well. So every other Tuesday, you can come and make a record with me and John Klein, who was from the Banshees. So, you know, and we make a record with you. We just released the record on Cherry Red.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, check it out. So, and that's every 2 weeks. So the 1st and 2nd, we're doing it. You have to book the studio. Mondays, you can just turn up, you know, and play. And you have a jam. And it's at the rear of Wimbledon Library. It's Merton. Merton's a funny borough. The west side of it is quite well to do. The east side is as poor as anywhere you get with the estates and all that. We've got a few people, mental health issues, don't we all? You know, that's all fine. They're some of the best players we've got, you know. So all good, yeah. And it was for old blokes, but it's ended up with women and younger people, so all are included. Come along.
Yeah, that's class. That is really a good thing. That.
Yeah.
So what else have you got like happening in your life? I know you're going on tour soon, aren't you?
Yeah, we start in October. So Skipton is the first one.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're off on tour. We're going to Europe. So my boys are doing that as well. My sons are coming out on that. They're doing some of the shows with us. They're doing Music Port as well, just on their own. And we're off to Ireland as well this year. We've done America last year, the band. So, yeah, we've got a lot of shows coming up. I've got a blinding new album coming out called Automated Paradise with John Klein. That is something else. Yeah, Dimple Discs. That is really like punk, post-punk, you know. That is a throwback record, yeah.
When's that out? Do you know yet?
October.
All right, nice one.
Yeah, Dimple Discs. Yeah. Shauna will probably do the promo on it, you know, I would think. So, yeah, that's coming out. And then, yeah, got Irish record with the boys out in the new year, you know,
yeah,
which is all proper Irish, Foggy Jew and Carrick Fergus and all that. And it's good, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's been great to speak to you, John. Is there any links you want me to leave to things like your website or?
Yeah, for gigs, jahwobble.com, the gigs are on there. I do art, there's artwork on there. You know, there's an eBay shop where I do paintings. I think we're sold out now, but I've got to just give some new paintings to Heather who sells them. Hedge is a nickname. She does them. So, yeah, there's tons of stuff going on. There's the dub albums. There's a new version of the dub album out on silver vinyl. That's coming out that's during any time now, I think. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, check it out. You know.
Yeah, I'll leave. Yeah, like I said, I'll leave the links there. But I really did enjoy Dub Volume One as well. That's great. I I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes.
Nice one, mate. Thanks, Ethan. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all that. You know. So yeah, it's all good. Ethan, speak to you later, mate.
Nice. Well, thank you, John. See you.
Thank you. Cheers, mate. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.